To say earlier. Rosalind, let me start us off with you. So of these 5,319 polling stations that were not opened, you can expect that many of them were in the 4 counties where the results, the election process was cancelled to take place on Saturday. What can the Commission do different, or law enforcers or any other stakeholder, to try and ensure that we don't have a repeat of what we saw today in terms of the disruption of either launching the exercise at all or any other? Can anything be done differently to guarantee that on Saturday there will in fact be elections?
Yes. Polling stations can be moved out of where they are normally registered to be. So you can say we can't hold an election in point X, we're going to hold it in point Y. I'm not sure the chairman is right when he says if they don't vote on Saturday, then we close it, because if the result affects the outcome of the presidential result, then he cannot declare the presidential result. That's what the law says.
But can you hold an election past 60 days?
Yet again, no, it's not holding an election. This is a postponed election. The election has been held today. But yet again, they say election results must be announced within 7 days. So there's like a tight spot in there, like, can he extend it beyond 7 days? I guess that's why they say it 4 days from today, so that then again they can announce a result within the 7 days that the law gives them. It doesn't say what happens if on Saturday there's no election held there. We're going to be in one of, again, the lacunas we've been talking about. Like, what happens if on Saturday they barricade all those centers again? But they can actually set up a center outside of their place. But it shouldn't be cited, I cannot access it, or it is expensive for me to access my right to vote, so that you cannot take a polling station outside of my county. Again, that becomes a natural justice issue, becomes a fairness issue. So I think the IEBC is in a very, very tight spot, because they must hold the election. I don't know what they're going to do right. I walked into a polling station this morning to observe at 5:45. I was in a polling station this morning, and I thought I walked into a military barrack. So even over militarizing the station is not going to work, because for me, I actually got really scared, like, what's going on here? Even as I walked in, I was like, is someone going to stop me? Is someone going to say, don't walk in? Yeah, I walked in, but I was really scared. So they're really in a tight spot, and I think this is something we're going to have to work.
Macharia, your thoughts, especially on that 7-day window where a presidential the result must be announced, yet at the same time factoring in these areas which could possibly outcome the total vote, and if they're unable to do it within that stipulated period, is it in your opinion another lacuna that we're headed for?
Obviously that creates a problem. I think what they will be hoping is that the number of votes in those places which did not vote cannot change the outcome, even if you get 100% turnout. Because really, whatever happened today in Kisumu, Siaya, and all those other places, I don't think anything will change between now and Saturday. The same will happen. I don't think we have enough forces to get those places open. You can open the polling station, but it will be full of policemen rather than voters.
Right.
So I don't think anything is going to change. I think they'll just have to be hoping that they get a good enough number from what comes in so far, so that they can say that non-vote will not affect the outcome, even if the people voted. If it does affect the outcome, then you have a real crisis, because then you cannot declare the results.
I think, Anne, we shouldn't worry about what IEBC should do at this moment. I think, as the chairman has put it, let them just stick with the law, do the best they can. Because the problem we are facing in this country is not electoral, it is political. So after this election, I'm confident that the political class will sort out a number of things through dialogue. So from there, maybe whatever they agree on, they will hand over the dossier to IEBC through legislation, and it can do its best. So we should.
And what would make them talk? Turnout? It can't be outcome because one can pretty much reasonably only expect one outcome.
It may not be outcome, but what I'm saying is that IEBC is facing certain challenges. Now, the emphasis we have on this table and across the countries, people are discussing the legalities, what IEBC should do legally and not legally. That one, it probably is doing its best to do that. But then, the cure to the current crisis in this country is not legal. Because as you will notice, a lot of people could even end up in court in the next few days, but the legal part has demonstrated it can't work. So what is going to work is this. Let IEBC do its best within the provisions of the law that is available. But then after this, we are expecting that the political class will find sense in the need to sit down and discuss the political problems that have caused this legal crisis. And if we do that, maybe a number of changes will come out. So we don't need to put the whole burden on IEBC. Let it just go on like this. Even
IEBC can only run an election.
Yeah, it can only run an election. And on Saturday, what it is doing is within the law. You can imagine the chairman of IEBC is even announcing that, you know, we should do it in 7 days. If he was given 14 days, he will have accepted. But now he has only 7 days. So probably he has a limit because he can't go beyond the constitutional threshold. So what I would advise the IEBC chairman is not to go sleepless. Let him take some sleep and just operate within the constitution, because the problem is beyond him.
It's beyond him.
Yes, this problem is political. And unless the political class solve this problem, it's going to multiply. It will create a new life of its own. So we hope that after tomorrow, or probably Saturday, I think Saturday there could be no results because they are giving another chance to a group. But probably by Monday we shall have the results announced. That is when real work begins in this country, in my opinion, because there is a lot of stuff to sort out politically and people must sit down and talk. And by the time we are talking about that, IEBC, probably all the commissioners will have taken leave, they would be on holiday. So the contest will be between the political class.
Prof, we're going to talk about, you are quite humorous. We're going to talk about sorting out the political issues, and you're quite right to say that, you know, IEBC's mess can only be to the extent that they do not do what the law requires in terms of their, JD. But beyond that, there is political issues, and I think we heard a bit of perhaps conciliatory would be giving a lot of room, but we heard some sort of climb down from the president today after he voted, in terms of talking and, it being incumbent on a leader to do that. It's a responsible thing to do. We'll get to that shortly. But Macharia, I want you to respond to what Roslyn said in terms of the police presence that she witnessed, and of course we've seen across the country, and to what extent you think that can be a factor in terms of keeping people away from polls, given the culture and the relationship that we have with security forces in this country. Many people still first see a police force and not a police service.
The police are put there for a purpose, which is to maintain the peace. But the fact that they are there in such big numbers in polling stations tells you there is a problem. And sometimes you don't have to wait for stones to be thrown before deciding, am I going out there? Or as an ordinary voter, wherever you are, you look at that police presence, you know there is a problem. So you're not going to get out of your house to go and vote. And then unfortunately, we also have a situation in many areas where the police are seen as a force of occupation. Because our police, I think, really operate on a colonial mindset, that when they go to Kibera, they're not just there to maintain the peace. They're there to beat up people for the sake of it. Even people who are in their houses will be beaten up. We saw that in Kisumu, Migori, all over Nyanza. The police going out there, not just to enforce the peace, but to actually break the law, which means if they can't catch up with the demonstrators who are throwing stones at them, they go breaking down doors and entering houses and beating up innocent people who are in their houses. So that is the kind of police force we have. And if it is seen as a force of occupation, then its very presence becomes a deterrent to people who want to go out and vote.
That's very interesting, especially because we had the Inspector General, Joseph Boynet, I think it was evening, say that, you know, they had reports of people who intended to attack these convoys of, you know, IEBC papers going for tallying, etc. And he warned that they were heavily guarded and that those who attempted to attack these would be responsible for whatever consequence, meaning that, you know, it almost sounds like it's not about commensurate force right now. It's about, you know, what are you expecting when you attack such a convoy? What do you think of that?
Obviously, if you attack a convoy carrying voting materials or anything else, and you're trying to use force,
or even money,
you can expect some reprisals.
More than equal force.
But I think this thing has to be measured. It has to be proportionate. Yeah, but and I think our police have a tendency of going overboard.
Yeah, but I think the point is, it goes back to what I said a moment ago. If we solve our political problems, the political problems that have aggravated this crisis, the police presence is not necessary. If you look at the last general election, when we had it in August, I walked in the a polling station and there was just one policeman. And there were probably almost 40, 50 people in the queue. Those people could still disarm one policeman and cause trouble. But the fact that they were obeying the law and they were comfortable with what was going on meant that there was even no necessity for a police officer. So the extended police presence in the polling stations itself is a pointer to the bigger problems that we have in this country, and talking against the police itself does not again help Anne. It's like talking against the IEBC. We must sort out the political problems that face us to make it unnecessary for the police to seek residence in the schools for a long time and on the streets.
But by and large, how do you think they carry themselves today?
I don't think that as an individual I support violence. I think I don't. And there have been cases where we have even seen it on television where the police have acted excessively. In some cases you see that even people they are attacking are running away.
Yeah, but today, do you think, because there has been a lot of talk about, you know, how the police have been conducting themselves throughout the election period, would you say that today you saw some sort of restraint, proportionate force? How would you describe the interaction? I think that there are places where we have seen some restraint. In fact, in some cases, such as you know, parts of Kakamega, even the officers came out to tell the voters not to break the law, the demonstrators. That is the kind of thing. You remember in 2007, Anne, there was this police officer, the administration police officer, who went out of his way to persuade people in Macharia not to do certain things. Right. This is the kind of approach, the first line of approach should be this. And then when people insist, then you now think about the limited force you can use. But I think probably the police force also are worn out by the situation and emotionally weak to deal with the situation, and they sometimes react badly. For today, there were areas where it was mild. But if you look at the happenings in Kisumu, you realize that in some cases the police lost it.
And if I may just chip in on that, I voted in a station where it was all relative calm. There was no threat of violence from probably NASA agents or otherwise, but there was a heavy police presence. When you live in a country where you have to be escorted by a policeman to cast your vote, something is wrong. And that's where the conversation needs to start. What is wrong?
And I think
why are the police guarding me to take a democratic right, even where there's no threat of violence? I think that's where the conversation needs to start.
And I think that's where we need to go. The outcome of this election is already a foregone conclusion. Uhuru will win, and he will be sworn in. There may be some. I don't even think NASA will bother to challenge it in court, unless the other cases by civil society which are still pending proceed. But we must then get towards solving this political problem. Yeah. Because that is where the issue is, as a professor has said. And some of us were involved in an initiative actually before the elections to try and broker something. To try and see what is it that can be done so that people get a chance to vote in peace, or there's a political settlement so that the elections are delayed for a while to allow the IEBC to meet what you might call the minimum threshold for free and fair elections, and then we go to the polls. But the political classes were not interested in it. But we recognize even at that period that people are talking about going to court and go to the... Yes, you can go to court and get all the judgments you want, but at the end of the day, the solution would have to lie in some political agreement.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that we did not do. We passed a new constitution in 2010, but we decided to bury our heads in the sand on issues which now are affecting us in terms of some very basic reforms that needed to be done, which we ignored. Now we are feeling it. The danger now is not even, there's a big fear of violence. I don't think there's a big problem here in this year. But if we don't sort it out this year, in 2022, we will have an explosion that will certainly be worse than 2007. That one I can guarantee you.
Yeah, and you know, there was that almost competing interest that we were talking about up until the run-up of this election, between the fact that everybody knows there's so much that needs to be on the table and that will not be sorted out by elections, and balancing that with the fact that here you have the constitution, which is very clear in terms of when an election should be held, and you have what the judges said. And you know, it's a mixed bag whether they were right or wrong in what they decided to pursue first in terms of priority. Do you meet the constitution's demands and then sit and talk? Perhaps that's something that, you know, we'll wait and see how it pans out, and you can only judge in retrospect.
The constitution gave us the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. Unfortunately, we chose not to solve the issues there, and so many other opportunities we chose to ignore. If you look at the original draft constitution, it laid out a pretty comprehensive reform of the political system. But when our politicians went to Naivasha, they decided to trash all that and go for a system they feel comfortable with. Because everybody thought, I'll be the president, so I need more powers. And that is where the problem lies, because we still have an issue where in Kenya the presidency is about eating.
Selfishness.
How much will I eat? How much will my people eat? And that is why it becomes almost a do or die thing, that I must win. And we as Kenyans are so foolish that we think we must win. Our Kikuyu must win. Our Luo must win. Our Kalenjin must win, and everybody else can go to hell. But that does not solve anything. That is where the problem lies. And we place so much premium on the presidency. But I always say, look at a country like Switzerland. Who here can tell me who is the president of Switzerland? Can you? It doesn't matter. It really does not matter. Because they have a system that works. It is not dependent on one man wielding all the power.
Yeah, and we have, I'm sorry, we have to go to break. I will return with you more on that, the conversations that we need to be having that will fix the issues that elections can't. And of course, now that NASA has transformed itself into a national resistance movement, what does that mean? We're talking after the break. Stay with us on Ballot 2017.